Okay, chapter 12 is farm bankruptcy. Let me give you the background to chapter 12 to help you understand what it does and what it doesn't do. So chapter 12 bankruptcy was initiated in the 1980s. So you all know what happened there. Land prices crashed, interest rates were 20%, big farm financial crisis, right? So the bankruptcy was enacted to help farmers out. Oh, by the way, on the chapter 13, there's certain debt limits that are there. So not anybody can do chapter 13. Chapter 12, you can see the debt limit there as well. So what the big advantages of a chapter 12, which only farmers and fishermen can use chapter 12. I didn't put the fishermen provisions up here. I doubt any of you are fishermen, so I didn't bother. But the big advantage to chapter 12 is it lets you cram down the debt to the value of the collateral. Because in the 80s, people were buying ground for $4,000 an acre. In the next year, it was worth $2,000 an acre. And so the court said, if you go to chapter 12, you can reduce your debt down to that $2,000 level, the value of your collateral. We don't have that problem. Our collateral has not, at least the land and most other assets, have not gone down in value. So we really can't use that cram down. Because if your debt is secured with your land hasn't gone down, at least not very much. So the cram down really doesn't help us because it doesn't apply right now. Also, you can get a lower interest rate. Well, your interest rates are already pretty low. So again, chapter 12 doesn't help. In the 80s, that helped enormously. Chapter 12 saved a lot of farms. Today, with the current farm financial situation, chapter 12 is not going to save a lot of debt for the farm. So what chapter 12 does do is it lets a farmer go to the bankruptcy court, and it's similar to chapter 13. It lets the farmer say, look, I can make this is a viable farming operation, I just can't cash flow the debt. So the farmer goes to the bankruptcy court, and the farmer has to provide a business plan. And the business plan will say this: I got this many cows, here's my cash flow, here's my debt. If you will restructure my debt this way, I can come out of this bankruptcy with a viable farming operation, and I can pay this much to my creditors. Okay? It has to be a viable plan. And this plan is scrutinized closely by the judge and, most importantly, the creditors. Because if the creditors thinks that the farm, and many creditors will object to the plan, because the creditors don't want to lose any money and they don't want to wait on their money, unsecured more so than secured. But you have to show that plan is viable. Because if it's not, the judge might kick it out or the creditors might object to it, and the judge might agree with the creditors. But a Chapter 12 bankruptcy can be a very good thing. It can save family farms. Right now, the last few years, I bet there's not 10 Chapter 12 bankruptcies in the entire state. Just doesn't happen. Now, if we have a similar situation back to the 80s, I'm going to become an expert in Chapter 12 bankruptcy pretty quick because we'll need a lot of them. But I don't see it happening. I think Chapter 12 has a limited value under current situations. You guys got any comments on bankruptcy? Anything I said you disagree with or miss anything? Okay. You had your chance.
Can I get a question?
Yeah.
So in all these bankruptcies, I mean, what's the consequence, right, to the person who's filing bankruptcy? I mean, there must be some trade-off or something. I mean, just you say, okay, I can't pay my debt, I get it restructured. I mean, is there some kind of trade-off or consequence to the person who's filing bankruptcy?
Well, the consequence is they're going to stay under the supervision of a bankruptcy trustee. So if you go into a Chapter 12, that trustee basically becomes the manager of your farm. They oversee all the money coming in and out. And if you want to buy a new tractor, your trustee has to approve it. So anything outside of the ordinary, paying feed bills, paying vet bills, that trustee has to approve it. And and the trustee just doesn't automatically approve it because the creditors are looking at the trustee very closely. And if the trustee messes up, those creditors will be on that trustee.
Who's the trustee?
Typically, it's an attorney appointed by the court. Yeah. Like there's an attorney in Columbus that used to be the state bankruptcy, or at least for the Columbus federal court. He did all the Chapter 12 bankruptcy. So, bankruptcy, it is not something you want to do because you give up a lot of control, but it is there. It can work to save farms, and it does. So kind of like your lenders, don't be afraid of bankruptcy. Bankruptcy can be there to help you. All right. I think I'm about on time. So I'm going to go to the next topic. Any other questions on that?
We were going to, I guess, the idea was probably between each topic, take a 5-minute break
Sure.
or something to allow, that way if people want to shift, the other sessions will be finished up and then that will allow people to shift back and forth
All
if
right.
they want.
Okay. I'll take questions while we're doing that. So, okay.
I have a question from earlier. What kind of requirements, expectations can the employer do when they terminate employees relative to confidentiality and non-competition clauses?
Okay. The question is terminating employees and non-compete clauses, basically.
And confidentiality.
On the non-compete, if an employee is already working for you, you have to pay them extra for that non-compete clause because they're already working for you. If before you hire somebody, you say, I'll hire you, but as a condition of that, you have to sign a non-compete, that's fine. But if they're already working for you, you better offer them $100 to sign the non-compete. Non-competes will hold up as long as they're not overly broad, meaning you can't say, you can't work for anybody else in my industry for the rest of your life anywhere in the United States. A court will never enforce that. Typically what we're looking at, what is enforceable, is usually about a year, and it's usually in your geographic area. So if you're in a very competitive, kind of concentrated area, maybe that's a city or a county. If you're selling, I don't know, maybe you're a lender, maybe that applies to the Midwest. It's on a case-by-case basis. But courts will let the employer do that to protect your proprietary information, but they also don't want to make it so harsh that that person can't make a living. But it's something to consider when you hire somebody is a confidentiality agreement and a non-compete may be something you want to look into, but it's better to do it before you hire them. You can do it after you hire them, but you got to provide them additional compensation. That makes sense? Okay. Any other questions? All right. Yes, sir.
And being an S corp, is there an advantage to selling that business and a difference between who owns the assets of that entity?
Yep. Okay. So let's say we've got a corporation with land in it. Corporations do a good job of saving taxes while you're operating, but it catches up with you. When you go to shut down a corporation, your taxes tend to be pretty significant. Because if you own a C or an S corporation and there's land in it, if you want to shut down the corporation and pull the land out and put it in your own name, that is a taxable event. Even if you're the sole owner of the corporation and you're going to be the sole owner of the land, it's still a taxable event. The IRS treats that as a sale. So what we've done with several clients is sell the corporation. So if they want to sell that land, sell the corporation. The problem is the buyer is inheriting that same problem. So then we usually discount the sale of the corporation maybe halfway between, if you sold it outright, what the tax liability would be. So the person buying it buys a corporation and buys that same problem, but they're getting a big enough discount on the purchase price that it's worth it to them. So shutting down a corporation has significant tax events because those assets coming out will be taxed. Whereas if you have land in a partnership or an LLC, typically you can pull that land out and there's no tax on it. So that's why you need good tax advice too. Does that answer your question? Be very careful with corporations. So if you have a corporation and you're shutting it down, be extra cautious. Get extra good tax advice. All right. I'm going to grab a water here before we start on the next topic.